lovely.
Give me your money.
Stay calm, Bruce.
Oh, the legendary Harvey Bullock.
What do we got?
That kid saw the whole thing.
My name's James Gordon. What's your name?
My name is Bruce Wayne.
I will find the man who did this.
Greetings, viewers, and welcome to Unrepentant Geeking, the show on Channel Awesome that knows it's not Batman, but desperately wishes it was. I'm your host, Shaun, and on today's episode, we'll be taking a look at what I view as one of the more troubled shows of the current television season.
There's a war coming. A terrible war. There will be chaos. Rivers of blood in the streets. I know it.
Every criminal in the city will start making moves.
Follow up on the Arkham connection.
Arkham's been closed for 10 years.
You're hurting yourself.
I'm testing myself.
Somebody has to take over. It might as well be me.
I'm gonna do what's right.
You're beginning to irritate me.
However dark and scary the world might be right now, there will be light. There will be light.
Anyone ever tell you, when you walk, you look just like a penguin?
No, nobody's ever told me that.
I know some people are enjoying the series, but for my money, Fox's Gotham has been a hot mess right from the start, and one that's only grown more problematic with every episode. And while that could be said in regards to the first season of many a genre series, that doesn't make sitting through the endless mediocrity of the show right now any easier to tolerate. By episode 8, I ended up reaching my limit, and decided to cease watching Gotham until such time I heard it improved, assuming such an event ever actually came to pass. It was the same approach I took with CW's Arrow, for example, and to this day I've not watched episodes 5 through 21 of that show's first season, nor do I ever expect to do so either. However, with a distinct lack of new programming available at the time, I decided to check back in with Gotham after its winter break. And having now seen the most recent episode of the series, I can safely say I'll probably be checking right back out again, only with less hope than ever that Gotham will ever truly be capable of living up to its considerable potential. For those of you unfamiliar with the series, Gotham is a Batman TV show that doesn't actually feature Batman. It's a concept that has worked in the past in comics, such as the beloved Gotham Central and more recently in Gotham Academy. Unlike both of those comics, however, which were firmly set in a present-day Gotham that includes a fully operational Batman, Gotham the TV series is a prequel that begins in the immediate aftermath of the murder of the Waynes, and nominally at least focuses on Jim Gordon when he was just a young detective trying to make it in one of the most corrupt police forces in history. Except Gotham is also about the growing discontent among the various gangs that populate the titular town, and the build-up towards a gang war that threatens to bring the city to its knees. As a part of this, Gotham is also about the rise of notable Batman foe Penguin, from a lowly thug to the master criminal he'll someday be. Yet additionally, the show is also devoted to following many other eventual Batman foes in their early pre-supercriminal days, including Catwoman, Poison Ivy, and the Riddler. And, oh yes, we can't forget about how the show is also, there's that word again, about the relationship between young Bruce Wayne and Alfred, and dear lord, are you starting to see the problem yet? Gotham is a show that is completely overstuffed with characters, themes, plot lines, and conflicting tones, and this leaves it with no real central identity to cling to beyond its Batman only without Batman. Even worse, as if they didn't have enough balls in the air already, the creators also seem determined to cram in a case of the week almost every episode, because apparently in their minds, half the time, Gotham is just another standard police procedural. The series is simply overwhelmed by its own unfocused and conflicting ambitions, and as a result, it continually staggers from plotline to plotline like a drunk, unable to walk in a straight line for more than 30 seconds. Characters of Gotham are driven by the demands of the plot, as opposed to behaving in any manner truly recognizable as human, and this in turn strips the series of the complexity it is clearly trying so hard to generate. The most recent episode of Gotham is a perfect example of how and why the show is not in fact functioning properly at this time. Titled Rogues Gallery, the episode chiefly serves to introduce Gotham's take on two important pieces of Batman lore, Arkham Asylum and longtime supporting character Leslie Tompkins. Now, in most versions of the Batman mythos, Tompkins has some sort of direct connection to Bruce, be it as a family friend or the doctor who comforts him initially in the wake of his parents' death. Neither of these elements appear to be in play in Gotham, at least not yet, but that in and of itself is not a problem. I don't mind when the series diverges from established Batman lore, because really, in fact, there is no such thing. There have been so many different takes on the character and his world, both in and out of comics over the years, that there's plenty of room for creators to offer their own spin on things. For the most part, Tompkins' introduction works, even if I'm left feeling a little wary since, at the moment, the show appears more interested in setting her up as a prospective love interest for Gordon than as a fully fleshed out character in her own right. Then again, as I've already mentioned, characterization is an issue Gotham struggles with in general, and at least Dr. Tompkins doesn't leave me wanting to pound my head into a wall repeatedly. For Gotham at this point, that's practically a triumph. And speaking of the episode giving me a headache, one of Rogue's Gallery's most infuriating elements was its truly dire stereotyping of those suffering from mental health issues. I know. Expecting realism from a nominal comic book show might be considered a fool's errand, but then that goes back to my earlier complaint of how much tonal dissonance exists in any given episode of Gotham. Rogue's Gallery in its opening sequence, for example, shifts several times between would-be humor, drama, and horror, but it does so in such a sloppy and half-assed manner that the entire sequence falls flat. And the rest of the episode is no better, with at one moment treating Arkham Asylum and its inmates as figures of tragedy, who represent the worst of a system gone horribly wrong, and the next as sources of humor to be laughed at by the audience because, hey, crazy people, am I right? Meanwhile, we get token nods towards the side of the show dealing with the building gang war via a subplot with Penguin that goes nowhere, and of course undercuts several established characters for no real good reason. We also waste significant running time on a series of sequences dealing with some no-name mob nobodies who seem to have wandered in from a completely different show that is clearly trying, and not particularly succeeding, at being a serious crime thriller. And as if the show didn't have enough to deal with as it was, now we're wasting time on random mooks? I give out. And because all of this is not yet enough for a single episode of Gotham, no siree, we also fart about a bit with baby Catwoman and baby Poison Ivy as they break into Jim Gordon's girlfriend's apartment. And while we're on the subject of the biggest waste of space on this show, the probably future Mrs. Gordon is off on her own dire subplot, engaging in lesbian shenanigans, while also apparently being so stupid she can't tell the difference between what an adult woman and a 13-year-old girl sounds like on the phone. Don't ask, please, just don't ask. And finally, there's the episode's ending, which serves to introduce our first full-on supervillain onto the show. Sure, Penguin is currently creepy, nasty, and more than a little murderous, but this guy not only uses electric shock therapy as a form of mind control, I kid you not, but if the preview for the next episode is anything to go by, he'll be using lightning bombs and a portable electrocution machine of his own design, no less, to commit crimes. Like I said, supervillain. The problem is I'm not convinced the reality of Gotham is nearly elastic enough at this point to support such an out-and-out kooky character. This is what I mean when I say the tone of the show remains an unstable mess. Up until this point, Gotham has mostly presented a world not that far removed from our own, or at least not that far removed from any number of other nominally realistic shows we see week in and week out on TV. Sure, you have a few over-the-top personalities like Fish Mooney and of course Penguin, but for the most part, Gotham has at least attempted to present something resembling our own reality. This makes introducing a seeming full-blown supercriminal who would not be out of place in a proper Batman story a risky venture at this juncture, to say the very least. Presumably next week's episode will feature Jim Gordon triumphing over the electrocutioner, but I would imagine not before a lot of red shirts are killed, because after all, if Gordon can easily take down supervillains on his own, why would we ever need a Batman in the first place? Which brings up another point. Does anyone really want to watch 5, 6, 7 more seasons of Jim Gordon failing horribly as countless people are killed around him? Because that's what we face if Gotham keeps going along at its current pace and approach. Either that, or else the show demonstrates that actually Gordon can handle things fine on his own, and in that case, again, why does Bruce need to become Batman? Since the creators of Gotham insisted on starting at a point when Bruce Wayne was so young, the ideal pacing of the show would have been spending a season or two at least on Gordon and his fellow cops dealing with more or less real-world opponents, while slowly ratcheting up the tension by showing the gradual rise of more colorful characters like the Penguin in the background. The idea should have been similar to the one explored in The Dark Knight, that Gordon's increasing success have the unintended consequence of raising the stakes, until we reach the point where the real freaks and monsters start to come in, and we're left with a situation that truly requires a billionaire to dress up as a bat to deal with it all. This approach might have made the series a bit more generic at first, but at this point it would be preferable over the off-kilter and at times deranged pacing and tone of the show we currently have instead. If Gotham is ever going to truly work on a creative level, one capable of, say, sustaining the series for more than a season or two, its creators need to come to terms with just what it is they're trying to create here. Is this a show about a crumbling city, as seen through the eyes of corrupt police and colorful criminals who at least in theory are locked in battle for control of it all? Is it the origin of not just a superhero, but the world he inhabits and the various personalities he bounces off on a regular basis? Is Gotham a dark and gritty, if still somewhat exaggerated look at both the worst and best humanity has to offer? Or is it an operatic and stylized, over-the-top exploration of one of the most famous locations in all of modern fiction and the heroes and villains who inhabit it? Is the show black and white? Is it gray? What is it? As it stands right now, the answers to all those questions would seemingly be both yes and no at the same time, and that's something no show can truly hope to sustain long term. Especially since while Gotham is doing okay in terms of ratings right now, it's far from generating the kind of blockbuster numbers that Fox was clearly hoping for. Barring a major plummet in the numbers, Gotham is all but assured a second season at this point, but I wonder just how long its audience is really going to be prepared to put up with its slipshod ways. Is Gotham beyond redeeming? Of course not, and as frustrated as I am by the series, I can still recall other great shows that had far worse first seasons. Star Trek The Next Generation's the immediate example that springs to mind for me. Gotham has a terrific cast and a great launching point for stories, what with its setting and all, and time again, I've seen episodes with the seeds of good ideas in them. Off the top of my head, I can think of half a dozen ways the creators could improve the series dramatically, and I make no claims to being a great writer. Provided the people running Gotham realize there are still very real problems with their series, there's plenty of time for course correction. My biggest fear, though, is that they in fact think everything's just fine with the show, and wait for several years of it slowly imploding, or maybe not so slowly, before it eventually comes to an ignominious end. I truly believe Gotham could still become the show we both need and deserve, but in order for that to happen, first things need to change, and the sooner the better. And that's going to do it for this episode. I'd love to hear your thoughts and opinions on Gotham in the comments section below. Do you agree with me that the show is troubled? And if so, what are your ideas for steering the ship back on course? Or do you think the show's just fine and I'm overreacting? Either way, feel free to let me and everyone else here on the channel also know what you think. Come back this Saturday when I'll be taking a look at the debut of a number of highly anticipated new comics for 2015, including S.H.I.E.L.D., Mortal Kombat X, and Star Wars. Until then, for Channel Awesome and Unrepentant Geeking, I'm Shaun Cronenfeld, hoping that all your geeky dreams come true. Well, except for that one, because seriously, man, that's just wrong. Ew.